Welcome to the Pressrow. Behind-the-scenes stories from the world of sports media. Pressrow. Insight and interviews from around the sports world. Now here's your host, Jonah Siegel.
Welcome back. Believe in the Pressrow. Jonah Siegel here in a gloomy February. Oh, not February. I jumped ahead of myself. If I wish it was February because it's my least favorite month of the year. A gloomy, typical Seattle day here, the end of January, and I am super excited. I just said to the guest, who, if you are watching, you can see sitting in front of you, and I will say, I will jump ahead. It's nice to see the face, because if you used to watch Hockey Night in Canada and the second period used to come on, we used to see this face a lot more regularly than we do now on our TVs. I'm very excited, like really excited to have today's guest with us, because it's not someone I've ever talked to before, someone whose opinion I really respect, and I'll get into why I'm really excited to talk to him. But he is the beat writer for your Ottawa Senators. He's Bruce Garrioch. Bruce, how are you?
Jonah, good to see you. Good to meet you, and good to talk to you. I can tell you, I think I would take a gloomy day in Seattle with no snow compared to the 25 centimeters that I had to move yesterday. So from my driveway. Now, I am a good neighbor because I did 5 driveways when I went out yesterday.
Well,
so.
you're a good man, Charlie Brown. I will say we'll say 2 things. I don't want this to be a show about the weather, but one, I would take 25 centimeters of snow if I got the occasional day of sunshine. Cold and sun I can deal with. It's the cold, it's the damp and gloomy that really gets people down. And a doctor I am not. I never believed in seasonal depression till I lived out here. And just the constant gray it wears on you. I do have good news for you, Bruce. I was just at CES in Las Vegas, and I saw the dream machine for every Canadian, and that is they've invented a robotic self-driving snowblower. I watched it there. It is coming. It is ready for market. It works like a home vacuum cleaner, which I happen to have.
Oh my gosh.
I can send you the video. I'll put it in the blog for everybody to watch, because I have it.
Yeah,
it is the coolest thing ever,
for sure.
But basically, you set the thing up. It senses when the snow lands, and it automatically goes out and snow blows your driveway for you. I don't know if it'll do your neighbors, but it'll do yours.
And I was it's funny, we were out in Tempe 10 days ago, and of course, the rink is located on the campus of the Arizona State University. And I went out for a walk at lunch, and a robot passed me on the sidewalk carrying pizza.
Yeah, it's delivering
I'm like,
food.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, in a prior life, my business was building those robots.
This is George Jetson stuff to me,
Well, so we'll take a right turn again. And as I said, I was just at CES, and I go almost every year. And I will say that the coolest thing about CES this year is that the technology that we saw at CES this year is all coming now. It used to be you go to CES. It used to be like going to the Detroit Auto Show, and they'd show you these cars that you'd never see in our lifetime.
Space age, yeah.
Everything at CES is now coming now. Those robots, we built them 5-6 years ago. They are now here. Yeah, you can get on most college campuses in the U.S. Food gets delivered to dorms by robot. It's pretty cool.
Amazing.
So you've answered. No, go ahead.
And I just live in little old Canada, right, where we haven't gotten that far yet. So we just got skip the dishes and Uber Eats. So we think that's great.
Well, Canada and Toronto and Ottawa and Vancouver are always 6 or 7 months behind everything. But I see with the crime going on in Toronto anyways, and on the TTC, they're really trying to close the gap on the US and keep up with the crime and what's going on. So everyone's doing their part there. You've answered one of my questions. You wrote a fantastic article recently about with the Bell Let's Talk about you not traveling, but you just said you were recently in Tempe. So when did you go back on the road?
Well, we were off the road for almost 2 years, and just at the end of last year, I've been pretty open with the fact that travel causes me anxiety. I took medication. I realized that this wasn't just Jonah. This wasn't just overtaking. This wasn't just about travel anymore. It was overtaking my life. I'm usually pretty fun to be around. I think I reached a point in 2019 or 2018 where I wasn't any fun to be around anymore, where travel would stress me out. I'd start getting upset about 3 days before I traveled, and it got to the point where I had to pull the plug on travel. But last year at the end of the year, I decided I'm going to do a couple of trips because I hadn't done any since COVID. And I, fully vaccinated at that point and feeling confident. So I went to Philadelphia road game. I went to road games in Montreal. And this year I've been back on the road regularly. I feel good. I'm not nearly as uptight. I travel is fun again, and it wasn't fun for me in the past. I wouldn't sleep very well. Now I kind of sleep like a baby, and I just take a little bit of medication for anxiety every morning. I got to make sure I eat before I take the medication, and it's just, I feel good. I feel like myself. When I go on the road, I can have fun again, and I enjoy it, and I enjoy being around the people. So that's been very, very positive.
Well,
And the first thing was to admit there was an issue and then go from there.
Well, your article is a good read. For those who haven't read it, I'll also add it to the blog when I post this pod. I'll tell you a funny story. I travel a lot. A typical year, I spend 180 nights a year in a hotel, and I don't cover a hockey team. And my vice to get through it, if you will, is not drinking when I travel. And I kind of laugh at those who do. I can be on a flight at 7:00 in the morning, and the guy or gal next to me will be ordering drinks, multiple. And yeah, literally. And
always throws me off when I'm in an airport and I pass the bar at like 7 a.m. and people are sitting there having a pint. Like, okay.
So here's the funny thing. So I'm at the Denver airport, and one of my memberships gets me a free meal at the Denver airport. And I'm there at 7:00 in the morning, and the bar is packed. And these three ladies next to me are pounding at 7 a.m. And they look at me and they say, "Why do you keep laughing?" And I said, "I'm just jealous that you can drink this heavily at 7 a.m. And they said, "Do you know why we drink?" And I said, "Because you're going on vacation." They said, "No, we're going on work trips, but we're terrified of flying. And the only thing that we can do to get through the flight is to drink." And I was like, wow. And they went around the bar, and 8 out of 10 people sitting at the bar drinking said that's why they were drinking.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're not alone. There are people
but I don't, it's funny, like, Jonah, I don't fear flying. I just I feared everything that went with it.
I got it.
Making sure I'm at the airport on time, not missing a wake up call. If I had a let's say a 4 a.m. wake up call, like I remember one night in Dallas going to bed at midnight and being up at 2 a.m.
Right.
And I didn't have to get up till 4.
No, I get it.
And to catch my flight back to Toronto and then home. So it's been much easier this year. Let's put it that way.
Well, good for you for admitting it, seeking help, and taking care of yourself. Those are the most important parts. And thank you for sharing your journey, because we may not know who specifically, but I guarantee you've helped others deal with their issues too. So you started way back when, in 1988, with the Sun, I believe.
Yeah, that was when the Sun came into existence. Now, I was at a Sunday paper in Ottawa called the Sunday Herald. I started there. I was going to journalism school here in 1986 at Algonquin College, and I got a job in my second year. I did the stats. I started part-time in September of 85, doing the stats on Saturdays. And what I did was I'd go in at 9 a.m. and the first thing I'd have to do is go to the bus station. I'd take the bus to work, and I'd have to stop at the Voyageur Colonial bus station and pick up. We had two guys who covered the Montreal Canadiens and the Montreal Expos at the time. One was Brody Snyder and the other was Glenn Cole. And they would send their columns by bus on Friday night. And I would go get their columns, go back, and the first thing I do on Saturday morning is type in their columns and get them ready to go on the page. And then I'd start figuring out, what games were on that night. At 1 or 2 o'clock, I went and got everybody lunch. At 7 o'clock, I went and got everybody dinner. And then we'd finish around deadline. In those days, Jonah was like, what time do you think you can be done? I think I can be done by midnight. Well, okay, get it done by midnight. There was no immediacy. But all that to say was I made $75. I worked 15 hours. I made $5 an hour. And I made $75 for my Saturday shift. And you know what? It was the best. But I learned more there, and then I got hired full-time by then, and then we got bought by the Sun in 1988. I covered the Rough Riders for 4 years, and then when the hockey team moved in, I started covering the Senators in 1992. So it's been a pretty good run. Touch wood, it'll continue for a bit here.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. You've certainly been there through thick and thin. It's been an interesting run for the Senators, and an interesting run of some pretty awful luck. I was thinking about this last night, and I'm sure you're gonna fill in some blanks that I'm missing. But you had the tragedy with Luke Richardson, and I think it was his daughter who tragically died.
Yeah, Darren.
And then their owner passed away. Now you've got a coach who's been diagnosed with ALS. Those are just three, and I think there were some other incidents that are in between that I'm sure I've forgotten of. That's a lot of dark clouds around one organization in a relatively short amount of time. Tough to cover those things, no?
Yeah, and then obviously I was there when Luke Richardson's daughter died. Darren, and I think that the Richardson family has done a tremendous job carrying on her legacy through the Do It for Darren organization. I think if you look at Luke Richardson behind the Chicago bench, many nights he's wearing a purple tie. That's in honor of his daughter Darren, who loved the color purple. His wife Stephanie, they still live in Ottawa in the off season. His wife Stephanie was actually on the ice the other night for the Hockey Talks conversation night. And so they've done a lot. The loss of Eugene Melnick, while unexpected, was I had seen him in the last game I saw him at was I think January 25th or 28th last year. It was the game where Aaron Dell took out Drake Batherson and caused him to have a high ankle sprain. And Eugene was at that game, and I went down to talk to him, and he didn't look very good. And I asked him about 3 times, "How you doing?" And he said, "I'm fine. I'm good. I'm fine." And you know what? If you talk to him on the phone, you wouldn't have known anything was wrong with him. And then I exchanged texts with him till around March 1st, and then I didn't hear from him again. And I figured, that it wasn't very good. And obviously after the lengthy illness, this latest news with Bob Jones, he found out before Christmas. He wanted to get more tests. This is really, really difficult for Bob and his family. I think it's very, very brave of him to share his story and his family to share the story, to raise awareness for ALS and maybe raise some money to help find a cure, because you know, there is no cure right now. And obviously you met Bob Jones. Bob Jones is just a great guy. I mean, you know, whether it's, and those coaches, they spend hours together. You know, I walked into a bar in Dallas. I don't know, sometime in December, and you know, they happen to be sitting there, and so I went in and I had a beer with them, and they're, you know, it's just interesting to listen to them talk hockey, because they talk hockey on a different level than you and I, and they were talking about an aspect of the game, an area of the game that they've been struggling with, and you know, DJ and the staff, they just said, you know what, we're going to do it this way, and we're not going to change. And Bob was like, yeah, we should, because we've changed it 3 or 4 times, and the players are thinking too much. And Davis Payne was there, and he agreed. And it was interesting that that aspect of their game after that completely changed, and it went well for about 6 weeks, but that in the last 2 weeks or so, it's kind of all fallen off the rails. But Bob is just a really good guy. He's a very funny guy, and I just wish the best for him. And you know, it's tough, but it was nice to see the other night Josh Norris hand him the player of the game award, just for his contribution.
So selfishly, one of the reasons I was most excited to talk to you is that growing up in Toronto, the biggest rivalry that I remember the Maple Leafs having was with the Red Wings. Was with the Red Wings. And then that kind of dissipated when they moved. And then the Leafs, it wasn't the Habs. The Leafs, the team I hated the most was the Senators. Those battles in the playoffs between, you know, Tucker and Alfredson, those groups especially. That was hockey, right? Like those.
The great thing about the Leafs, though, Jonah, was they had all those characters. They had Gary Roberts, they had Joe Newendike, they had Darcy Tucker, they had Shane Corson. Pat Quinn was a villain. You know, you said Daniel Alfredson was a villain. Like people in Toronto hated Daniel Alfredson.
But that's my point. But that's my point. My point is, people used to say to me, like, my son was playing hockey in Toronto, and he ended up playing on a team called the Canadians, and people are like, you're going to let your kid wear that? I'm like, who are the Canadians? Like, I don't even care, as long as he's not playing for a team called the Senators, right? It kind of breaks my heart that they play the Senators now, and it's like, wah, 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 wah. Like, who cares? Like, it's the rivalry's there, but it's not. So
and it's funny, Jonah, because that's what it needs. It needs another playoff series. Ottawa now, it's kind of like they've gone through bad times at different times. You know, Toronto went through that lengthy. The one story, and I've written it a million times, is that, and I've had to kind of stop myself from writing it the last couple of years, because I ran into a cycle where every time they played the Leafs, I go, you know, this rivalry doesn't have any characters anymore, and it doesn't. There's nobody on either team that anybody really can't stand. I think people in Ottawa, do they love Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner? No, but I think they respect the way they play.
But don't they need? I don't like interrupting, but don't they need to? Don't they need to beat the shit out of each other in a playoff series to hate them?
Yes, absolutely. And that's why Ottawa's rivalry with Montreal became better, because in 2015, you know, Paul McLean and Michel Therrien went toe to toe, you know, in a playoff series, or 2015, I think. And so
we'll forgive you. It's 8 years ago.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, we can't have the days of Pat Quinn and Ty Domi and Darcy Tucker. You know, I remember that night that Ottawa was down to like 7 players on their bench, and they had an illness and going through their locker room, and guys kept leaving the bench. And at the end of the game, they had 7 players left, and I think it was so they asked one of the Leafs, and the Leafs player said it was Owen Nolan, and Owen Nolan said, "Well, boo hoo,"
Right.
So what, they're sick, right?
And
Like,
didn't Alfredson throw
it
something in? Didn't Alfredson
Yeah.
throw something into the stands one night?
Well, that was one of the great ones, was that he faked. Remember, Sundin had been suspended by the league for a game for throwing his broken stick into the stands, I think against the Nashville Predators. So Sundin serves his suspension. He comes back the next game. The Ottawa's in there. I think they were kicking the hell out of the Leafs at the time. Might have been 5 or 6-1.
It was ugly. It was an ugly game.
Yeah, Alfredson breaks his stick, and he pretends to throw it in the stands. He was booed mercilessly every time after that. Of course, and then that playoff series. Remember, Ottawa could never close Toronto out. I mean, there were so many. Remember they got up 3-1 in a series, and that was the series where Melnick, they got up 3-1, and Melnick says, "I just can't wait for us to close this out." And
isn't that where he trashed the locker room or something?
Well, yeah, that was a rumor. Yeah, but so he says, "I'll just be sitting in my private box enjoying a beer and watching us beat these guys." And he's a Toronto guy, right?
Right.
And then of course, then it comes to 3-2. Or maybe it was 3-2 and they tied. Yes, they had 2 chances to close them. So they lost. Christer Olsen hits Ty Domi into the glass in Ottawa in Game 6. Domi bleeds like he's never bled before, right? Like nobody ever saw Ty Domi bleed. And of course, people in Ottawa thought he had the ketchup packs in his helmet or something. But he gets hit by Christer Olsen. Well, now there's Game 7. And at the time, Ottawa is up 2 or 3-0. Like they scored a couple of quick goals on Curtis Joseph, and then they lost in Game 7. And that was one that chased Patrick Lalime. Jacques Martin got fired. Like after that, the Senators underwent wholesale changes. Of course, and then they get to Stanley Cup Final 2007, and all the Leaf fans say, "Well, they didn't get by Toronto, so doesn't mean anything."
But but this is my point. Like my point is, there's 81 games now. We're sitting here. It's January 27th. If nobody picks up a paper, if you open up your if you open up your web browser and you read a paper, I'm being kind, I promise. So if you're looking at a paper online, you're reading a blog, you're listening to a podcast, or you're listening to the radio, everyone already knows that who your teams are playing in the playoffs. There's no meaningful games on the schedule anymore. Nobody you're going to go to a game. It's 1 of 81. Yawn. Those meaningful tilts don't exist anymore. That's what I think is so sad. And as much as I hate your team, I want them to get better. I want them to improve so that there is a meaningful game, because right now it just doesn't matter. It's really sad.
Yeah, and it would be good if both teams in Ontario were back to being good at the same time. And you're right. That's one of the issues, Jonah. Toronto went through that dark period. Now Ottawa's going through that period where they're going to miss the playoffs for the 6th straight year. I don't think, and this could be completely wrong, but I'm not sure since 2004 if they've been in the playoffs at the same time.
So the night the Blue Jays were here in Seattle.
They were in the playoffs the year that Toronto blew the lead against Boston.
Thanks. So that was a great year to remember. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So the night the Blue Jays opened the series against the Mariners this year, I was driving to the game and I was listening to a Toronto radio station in the car with my son. And I pulled the quote because I listened to it last night. The quote was, it was right around the draft, I believe. I'm not sure anybody is having a better NHL offseason than Ottawa GM Pierre Dorian.
No.
Like they had
Yeah.
basically given him, if there
Yeah.
was an award, they'd given him an award for best offseason. Like, what happened,
Yeah.
in your opinion?
Well, I think a couple things. I think number one, this team has not played very well defensively, and as much as they brought in all this talent, they've gotten no secondary scoring from the bottom two lines. They didn't get they talked about getting a right shot defenseman. They didn't go get one. And I understand them not wanting to pay 2 first-round picks and one of their better prospects, either a Ridley Gregg or a Mad Sogard, their goaltender in Belleville, for a guy like Jacob Chikrin. And Chikrin was hurt through most of the summer, so there was some risk involved there. There would be no blaming and saying, let's see the guy play first. Now he's come back and played really well. And I think one of the things, Jonah, that I thought would be way better this season, and now Cam Talbot is hurt, is their goaltending has not shown any form of consistency whatsoever. And they lost their top center, Josh Norris. Now for the balance of the season, they lost him early. It just seems that adversity has always been around the corner for this team. And just, when you think that they're finding their groove, they can't seem to find consistency. And now, with the team for sale, I mean, are there really going to be many changes? I don't think so.
So that's a good pivot or segue.
Yeah.
So Melnick dies, the daughters own the team. To nobody's surprise, the team's for sale. You've been leading the charge on speculation as to the process. You broke that story what seems like ages ago, and it seems to have slowed dramatically. Why do you think that is?
The sale?
Just the process. It seemed like,
Well, I think what happened was a couple things. They wanted to open the room for the due diligence room on December 1 and have it open until December 31st.
so for those listening, the room is an electronic data room where
Yes.
those who are invited to participate get exclusive access to look at the books digitally. Right. So that's what Bruce is referring to. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So now they didn't get the room open on time because they didn't have all the financial information that they needed from the estate. Eugene Melnick's estate is still being evaluated as we speak. But they were at a point where they felt they could open it. They opened it 10 days ago. And I guess the question is, how long is it open? How long does that New York sports banker leave it open? How many people are in that room? Now, more than a dozen people applied by signing NDAs. I can tell you, not all of those people were granted access to the financial data, because the league doesn't want to show just
12.
anybody its financial data. I think we're in a period here when, what's going to happen here is the other thing that was holding things up, by the way, is, I should add, is the vetting, because the league didn't want to allow just anybody in, so they've had to vet everybody. So I think what's going to happen here is when the betting starts, and I would anticipate that's, if we're getting February 1st, it's going to be sometime soon. I would assume that we'd know who the owner of the Ottawa Senators will be by March 1 at the absolute latest.
So is it safe to say that Bettman A wants a horse race? So he wants at least 2 or 3 parties to be able to bid. Bidding is good.
Yes.
And 2, he knows who he wants bidding. So
yes, 100%. He knows who he wants to own the team. Don't you? Don't you think? I mean, that's every discussion I have with people is I think that the league knows essentially who they want to own the team.
So do you have any idea who that party is?
Well, look, I believe the front runners are 2 people, because one is in the club and one has been in the club. I think the front runner One of the front runners is Michael Andlauer, the Hamilton-based billionaire, who owns a trucking company, and that trucking company, I believe, had the contract with the federal government here to move all the COVID-19 vaccines. And I think he's put together a pretty good partnership with Rocco Tullio, the owner of the Oshawa Generals, and who also had made a bid for the Senators. He offered Eugene Melnyk $650 million before he died, and Melnyk said no. And I think the other group that's involved is Jeffrey Michael Kimmel, the Toronto-based billionaires, who had spoken. They reached out to Eugene Melnyk in December of, I guess it would be 2021. 2021, Jonah, to see if he wanted to partner up at LeBreton. Gary Bettman told Eugene, make a bid on LeBreton, but don't partner up with anybody, because the partnership was what made it fall apart last time. Get the rights first, then decide on your partner. And I believe that Jeffrey Michael Kimmel owned 20% of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Kimmel sat on their executive board. Jeffrey Michael Andlauer owns people say 20% of the Montreal Canadiens. It might not be that much, but all this to say, Michael Andlauer attends Board of Governors meetings. I would think Jeffrey or Michael Kimmel has attended Board of Governors meetings. You're better to go with who you know, right?
All right, so there seems to be a bit of.
So tell us what kind of players they are.
So
the Kimmel family, come on.
So
you said you played pickup hockey with Michael, right? Was it?
We played hockey with them in a pickup league, and they were the best two on the ice. I can tell you that by far. Yeah, by far. What's the fascination with Ryan Reynolds? Like, is it really real?
Yeah, I think it's real, but I think the fascination is his reach.
Okay.
And what he could bring to the franchise. You know, I heard Gary Bettman say at the Board of Governors meetings, I think it was in December, that he and Bill Daly had met with Reynolds, and Reynolds said that his social media reach was 100 million people. And I think that's why the league has told them, Jonah, that anybody who buys this team, they want Reynolds to play some kind of role in it, because he's going to do a welcome to Wrexham type series here. He's going to expand the brand. He'll take people through the building of the new arena at LeBreton Flats. That's why, and I didn't even mention that. That's why this team is so attractive.
It's all about the real estate in a new arena.
Yeah, and that's why this deal has to be done. As you say, it's dragged on a bit longer than I thought. And that's why this deal has to be done so quickly, because you have to negotiate that lease of LeBreton Flats, and that's got to be done by September. So they can't really afford to take much more time here.
So for those that don't know, is that piece of property in closer proximity to downtown?
Yeah, it's basically, the best way I can put it is it's 10 minutes by foot west of Parliament Hill.
And
so it's literally a 3-minute drive. It's on the LRT. When the LRT here works, it's on the LRT line. It would revitalize downtown.
And the knock on the current arena is that it's out in the sticks.
That's part of the knock. And you know what? People always talk about attendance, and I'm sure some of the attendance issues here had to do with the owner, but I also think their attendance started to slip here, Jonah, when they told people their arena was too far.
Right.
When they decided to bid for a rink at LeBreton Flats and say, we need to be downtown, people all of a sudden said, well, if they think it's too far, what do we think?
Right.
You know? But I have friends in the East End who tell me, well, I can get to the Bell Center quicker. Well, no, you can't. Okay, so let's just stop that. I mean, I did that drive from the East End for a long time. It was never more than 45 minutes. You know.
So, you used to appear on the Hockey Hot Stove Lounge. I think it's something that's badly missed in the broadcast today. You know, they kind of do it with Elliot and Jeff. Do you miss it?
Yeah, but I don't know if you're aware or not, but I do a lot for TSN
Yeah.
on now on Center's broadcasts. I do a regular session called Question Period where I talk about the Centers. One thing I've found though is that I've become so busy with the Centers. The work I used to do talking to people around the league isn't probably as much as it used to be in the past, and the immediacy. I think the immediacy of the business. You know, when you did the Hockey Hot Stove, Jonah, there was no chance that anything you said on that Saturday was probably going to appear anywhere else before you got on. Now there's so much immediacy that I give Elliot and Jeff credit that they're able to keep that under their hats till they get to the second period, because a lot of times that stuff, you know, can be blurted out elsewhere, and you see it all the time. I miss the hot stove. You know, I miss, but the hot stove was the fun of talking to the people during the day, and then the little meeting with Strack and Ron McLean and maybe it was John Davidson that night before he went on about what everyone was going to discuss and the order you were going to go in, but my TSN segment for me is perfect because I'm speaking about something I know intimately, something I enjoy. I watch this team every day. I've got good knowledge, so it's for me. My segment here is a lot more comfortable. It's kind of funny when I was on the hot stove though. I was really nervous, like I would just sweat.
I think part of the challenge is the juice about the best part about the hot stove was it was all the vast majority of it was rumors, and back then things used to happen. When was the last time there was actually a real hockey trade, right? Like nothing happens anymore.
No, there's not. You know, hockey trades now happen in the off season. You know, you don't, you know, and I think general managers still talk a lot with the intention of trying to make a deal, but I also think that one of the things that's happened to general managers and is that if you make a bad deal, or what people, I shouldn't say if you make a bad deal, if you make what people perceive to be a bad deal, you get roasted right away.
Right.
Like within 3 minutes. Yeah. What everybody thinks your trade, you know. So and I think that has made general managers a little shy about pulling the trigger on deals.
So you've been around the league literally forever now in the modern era. What's the Ottawa perception of Gary Bettman as commissioner, and what's your perception?
Well, I think in Ottawa, because the team went into bankruptcy in 2003 and is still here, I think his perception here is still good. I think people credit him with the team still being here with finding Eugene Melnyk as the owner. You know, the only other person interested in 2003 when Eugene Melnyk bought the team was Nelson Peltz, who wanted to move it, I think, put it on wheels, move it to Portland or Houston at the time. I think Gary Bettman has done a lot of good things for the game, but the only thing I don't understand is Arizona. I just, you know, I was thinking last 10 days ago when we were there, Jonah, it's the third rink we've been to in Arizona. And when they were downtown in Scottsdale, it was then US Air Arena. people were like, no, 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 no. When they move to Glendale, that's going to be the answer, because Glendale people are going to go to Glendale. It'll be much easier to get there. I don't know how much you've been to Arizona, but there's a lot of driving
Yeah.
involved. So, went to Glendale. Well, a whole lot, they weren't paying their bills at Glendale, and now they're in a 7,000. And look, the atmosphere in Tempe is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a college.
But
It's a college campus. What do you expect?
yeah, but my God, no, but my God, like, it's not an NHL arena.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, and I don't know why that team hasn't. Well, I'd like to see it in Quebec City, yeah, I just don't understand why it hasn't been relocated.
So there's
I think for some reason he is bound and determined to make that market work.
well,
Whereas that didn't happen the first time in Winnipeg, right?
isn't it seeing the revenue success in Seattle and Vegas that if you get the building right and the ownership right, how much money they can make? Because the team here and
Yeah,
the team in
yeah,
Vegas
yeah.
are just printing cash.
Yeah, and I think that might be the case in Ottawa when they get the right owner and right ownership group and a rink downtown. I think you'll be back to your heydays where the rink is full and the support is there. So
there's a lot of markets that are, especially right now, very opposed to the hard cap. Where does Ottawa fans sit? Do they like it? Do they view it as a necessity?
yes, because otherwise, the
They can't
Toronto Maple
compete.
Leafs print money. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Most of the Canadian markets, I think, outside of Ottawa, Montreal, or Toronto, Montreal, maybe Vancouver, would support a hard cap. I
Right.
mean, they're also battling the US dollar,
Right.
right now. The US dollar for a long time was almost even with the Canadian dollar. Now it's back up to 35, 40 cents. So I think people in Ottawa want the hard cap. Now, if they get to a point where they're going to have trouble keeping some of those young stars, that will be an issue. But right now, I think it allows them to feel that they can compete.
Well, I really appreciate you doing this. It's good to hear that you're back on the road. I hope that we get to see you when you're here in Seattle. I can take you to an awesome bar right near Climate Pledge, and hopefully you will do it again.
Thanks very much, Jonah. It's nice to meet you, and talk to you, and we'll take care. We'll talk soon.
Until next time.